Hey friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today I would like to share with you all the Hoya in my collection. Some people call it collection. I typically just call them plants that I love and care about and that me and my wife take care of. They're beautiful and we are so lucky to have them in our home. Before I get into it, I just wanted to say, if you stick around for this video and you liked it, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel. So let's get into it. So there is one thing I forgot to mention. I just wanted to share the care needs, maybe a little bit of a background on these Hoya, and please let me know if you have any questions. This is my first Hoya in the ranking of easiest Hoyas. Hoyas, whichever you prefer. Now, this has been in our collection for quite a while. I don't know, I just said collection. This is Hoya Obovata. As you can tell, it has these larger leaves, a few quite large leaves, and then it gets a little bit smaller with the leaves. Some of them came out looking a little interesting. Not really sure why. We thought that maybe we had flat mites or some other type of pest on this, but it doesn't seem like that's the case because it has grown. These two leaves are fairly new. This one's even still hardening off and it looks pretty healthy. So maybe it's just a very slow grower, perhaps. Right now, this is living in, I want to say, this is a south-facing window. So north-facing window. We have this plant shelf and it sits pretty low on the plant shelf. So it doesn't get any real like direct sunlight, pretty indirect filtered light. And we do that because we want this plant to get nice dark leaves. And the thing with Hoya that I've noticed is that when they're in brighter light, their leaves turn a lot more light yellowish green, which is a vibe, but also I think I prefer darker green foliage for my Hoya, so that's why we're keeping this in lower light. Currently, I see maybe like 3 growth points right now, but we've had this for a couple of years, so do with that information as you will. Who's next? The wonderful. So this one we actually got as a freebie from a cool plant market type situation. Basically, nearby us at a farm is like kind of this plant shop trade sell thing where everyone meets and sells any kind of planty type thing. And the person who was selling us another Hoya gave this one to us for free. And it started out as a little baby one. I'll try to insert a picture so you can see what it looked like as a baby. And now it looks like this. And so as you can see, we have it on a trellis and it is very happy. It's popping out a new little baby leaf over here, if you can see that. Yeah. It has a little bit of splashing here and there, but not too much. This is the Dr. Ibok. This one, fairly similar to the Obovata in terms of the soil and the watering. I water it about once a week. It has very well draining soil. This fella has gone through spider mites and is still going strong. As you can see, some of the leaves come in a little interesting. Usually for the Ibok, this happens when it's kind of caught up on another leaf or caught up on the trellis. But typically it puts out these really nice kind of elongated teardrops of leaves. And yeah, I hope that's not a spider mite web. I'm gonna have to spray her. Right now it's feeling pretty firm, and that's how I can tell like if the leaves aren't super bendable, at least the older leaves. The newer leaves will be bendable because they're newer. Some of them aren't hardened off yet, so they're gonna be bendable. but the older leaves shouldn't be bendable. They should be pretty firm, and that's how you can tell, or at least that's how I tell, if it needs water or not. I just go touching it, and if it feels a little bit too bendy to me, then I'll give it some water. But typically I water it about once a week. It doesn't like to go without water for too long. It starts looking kind of ghastly, like gray. It won't die, but it doesn't like it. And if there's any new leaves coming, then it might damage them or prevent them from growing to their full potential. Other than that, this sits right behind me, and this is a south-facing window, like I said. It's actually a big sliding glass door, so it gets a ton of light, and that's not always good because some of the plants that are closer getting direct light, they really don't like it, and we're having kind of a problem with plants getting sun bleached. So if you want to follow along with that journey, definitely subscribe. Dr. Ibok on a trellis. Can you tell how proud I am of this? This is the Hoya Carnosa Crimson Queen, I believe. It's either Crimson Queen or Crimson Princess. One of them is outer variegated and one is inner. This, I believe, is the Crimson Queen. As you can tell, it has these beautiful pink leaves and pink stems when they're new, kind of new babies. Even some of the older ones, as you can see in the back here, are still bright pink, which is super beautiful. We keep it in another south-facing window in our bedroom. I'll try to show you a visual of that if possible. And right now it's actually putting out a lot of just like all white leaves, which I've noticed with the Carnosa is okay because they're actually kind of yellowish when they harden off, so I feel that they might have some chlorophyll in them. We've only had to say goodbye to some of the older leaves, like the very, very oldest first leaves that it's had. So it holds on to leaves really well. It puts out a bunch of runners that we've kind of just kept trellising around this kind of circular trellis, and just like with the other ones, I feel it. It's very firm right now because it just got watered. It's in a really nice, well-draining soil, and it gets watered probably about once a week, maybe a little bit longer, depending on how it feels. It's just gorgeous. I love these pink leaves on it, and it puts out half moons. All the variegation is just so gorgeous. It even has some splash on it. A lot of these are actually kind of dusty because I haven't really cleaned them in a while, but that's okay. It doesn't seem to mind it too much, but of course plants do better when they're able to be cleaned. Yeah, what a gorge. This one too, if you forget to water it and it has some new leaves coming in, which it pretty much always does, it will stop working on those leaves, and that might be a leafless node or two or however many it was working on. So we like to try to keep on top of watering. Okay, the next two have actually just kind of been put in a pot together, so I'm going to talk about them together. We have the Wilbur Graves, which is these like smaller leaves, and then we have the Freckle, which has kind of a larger, I'd say more oblong teardrop leaves. So these two we got at the little shop thing that I was telling you about earlier. They have both been amazing growers. We keep them in what they came in, which are these little things of fluval stratum. I'm not 110% sure what fluval stratum is, but it's kind of these little black balls, maybe beads. We basically just keep this very wet. It doesn't have any drainage in this. These two don't have any drainage, and they're kind of a see-through plastic cup. We have no problems with root rot or anything like that, keeping them really wet. They actually really love being wet all the time. I try to water these whenever I notice that the top portion of the soil is dry, and kind of when I squish it, it doesn't make like much of a noise, because it makes a noise when it's kind of like the dry pebbles in there. You can hear them. Same thing with this. It's in the same media, and it gets dry pretty quickly, but also I water it like constantly. So it really likes it. If I forget to water it, again, with the other ones, it will be more likely to not grow leaves as quickly, or whatever leaves it was working on won't grow. These new leaves are looking pretty good and sizable, but some of them are having those like, they kind of look like potholes. For anyone who's familiar, they kind of just like dip in, kind of like dimples. I don't know if you can see it better from the back side, but they kind of have some dimples, and they will start to get these like brown, it kind of looks like brown or purplish dots and coloring around the edges mostly. We were super concerned about this at first with another plant that I'll be showing in a little bit, because that one has been doing super well. It's in direct sunlight a lot of the time, and we were worried that it had thrips, but wasn't thrips. We looked it up. We looked up a bunch of images to try to see what it really was, and it looks like it's just sun stress. So in Hoya, it looks scary, but it's actually just sun stress. So if you have these near kind of in a higher light location, it's okay. Do not fret. That is just how Hoyas do, I guess. Here we go. Next up, we have these two little cuties. This littler one is Lacunosa Fraser Hills, and this one is Lacunosa Jawa Barat. So as you can tell, this one's a little bit longer. It's also more silvery. It looks like it's silver with kind of darker freckling. And this is a true teardrop shape leaf. And right now it's doing fantastic. I don't know if you can tell, but it's working on quite a few little leaves up at the top here. That's kind of the main growth point. It's not really growing anywhere else that I can tell. This one, as you can tell, this one's kind of like twisting around this leaf. I'm not 100% sure why, but the leaves that it came with originally, these two we got also at the same planty shop meetup thing, but at a different time. These ones are newer, so they haven't been with us for as long. And maybe they haven't been in the world as long, I'm not sure. But as you can tell, some of the older leaves are kind of smaller, and they're darker and they're rounder. And then the newer leaves have been coming in more, like I've been saying, oblong. I don't know if that's like the proper word for it or whatever, but that's the term I'm using. Kind of more similar to the Wilbur, honestly, in terms of shape. And it is getting some of that more like bumpiness to it. Kind of a thinner leaf and more bumpy in comparison to the older leaves. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's because I've been keeping it wet and it doesn't really get a chance to dry out. So it's like growing more or faster. I don't know. This one, they come in 2 cups. The first cup that the plant is actually sitting in has fluval stratum, and it looks like perlite. We don't really like perlite in this house, but you know, this is how it came. It has holes in this little cup. And then this holed cup sits in the unholed cup below it, and that's where the name is and stuff like that. And so basically all I have to do is pour water into where the plant is, and then the overflow comes into the outer cup, and I just make sure it doesn't overflow from the overflow cup. And that's it. Some mold appears to be growing on this one, so that's not my favorite, but it stays so wet that it makes sense. I mean, it's like wet and then some of it gets dry, and then it just kind of, yeah, makes sense that mold would be growing. But anyway, I keep this one really wet too, same as the other ones. This one, just like the other one, has an inner and outer pot. The inner pot has holes for drainage. The outer pot does not. And they both appear to be in fluval stratum with perlite. I just water them pretty frequently, but I haven't dealt with root rot or anything like that. Obviously there's some mold on the top of the fluval stratum and maybe a little bit of root rot, but it doesn't seem to care. Maybe I'll just try to let it dry out a little bit more in between waterings. I really don't want there to be mold. That's not preferable. And as I'm doing this, I'm looking for spider webs, little tiny spider webs. That would be an indication of spider mites, which we do not want. I'm looking for anything else that looks like pests, like little white dots, little black dots. Both of those would be crawling if they are alive, which we do not want in our home at least. They are normal and natural bugs, but they will eat our plants. So, oh, next is this hefty fella. Oh God. Oh. This video is brought to you by prednisone. I took some prednisone. I've been having a huge pain flare, but now I'm feeling better and so I'm recording. This beauty is a Pubicalyx or Pubicalyx or whatever you want to call it. It has these very elongated leaves. It vines. As you can see, it goes wild in our house. We have to curl. Like you can see, this one's been like twisting like a corkscrew. It was twisting around this other vine, and that looks cute and all, and it seems to want to do that, but when it does that, it like cuts off the circulation of the vine. Usually the one that's like twisting, like this corkscrew, it just kind of dies, and we don't want that. We want it to grow. So we untwist it if we notice it, which we have been recently, and then some of them we just have to cut because it has died. I'm not 100% sure why it dies. Probably, like I said, it just loses circulation maybe. It comes in with these really beautiful like crimson, purpley leaves when they're fresh and new, like this one right here. And then when it hardens off, it becomes this really nice, vibrant green. It kind of has a darker edge to it. I'm not sure what type of Pubicalyx this is, but it may be that purpley one, just because the other Pubicalyx I've seen are honestly more like a lighter green, and this Pubicalyx puts out a lot more dark and more purpley foliage. I don't know if you can tell these vines even, they're just like super dark, like red purple, and they're super beautiful. It looks like it's in a big pot. It's just its cover pot. The actual pot is tiny comparatively. So it needs an up pot soon, but the thing with Hoyas is they really don't have, at least the ones in our collection, don't really have that big of root systems. So they don't really need a huge pot. I'm about to eat my words with the next one that I'm gonna show you. But this one has been happy in this little pot, honestly. In this huge cash pot or cover pot. Yeah, it's growing wild, as you can tell. And we're just letting it because it's beautiful, and why disturb a thing of beauty? This one, again, gets watered probably a little bit less often, honestly, than the other ones sometimes. I want to say maybe once every 2 weeks, but I'd like to water it more often, like once every week. They're a chonker, as you can tell. It's just massive, and it's loving life. So this one I got at Target, if you can believe it. I got this at Target and it was tiny. When was that? A couple years ago. Yeah, best Target find, honestly. Okay, here you go, fella. Just don't fall over, please. Okay, all right, it's doing its thing. I'm just gonna let it do its thing. Whew, that prednisone is making me sweaty. Anyway, this is the Hoya Lisa, or Australis Lisa. Need I say more? It's blooming. It's been blooming. It started blooming in like fall, like early fall. Sorry, I'm like looking at something, hoping it's not a pest. It's awful suspicious looking though. Kind of white and fluffy. Better not be. No, okay. Hoya really like to scare me because they get these little crystallized clumps on them sometimes. And that's not a bug. That is leaf juice from when it's like trying to lubricate itself, I think, to push out the leaf. It has like some stringy stuff that looks like spider mite webs. And then it has these little crystallized bits that when you feel it, you can tell it's just like crunchy crystals. Honestly, just produced by the leaf. It doesn't have anything to do with pests. Thank goodness. But it does scare me quite often. So there's that. This is in a huge pot, and roots are coming out the bottom, if you can tell. So this one, I'm assuming does have a lot of roots, which is kind of unusual in comparison to the other ones. This one, just like the Obovata here, we got these at the same place, which is at Green Acres. I think the Obovata, honestly, is older, if you can believe that. This came in maybe like a 4-inch pot and only had like a few of these like standing up, like in the center. It has exploded in our care. It has multiple peduncles. This one has, as you can see, the blooms are working on their way to come out. If they come out before I publish this video, I will show what the blooms look like. Actually, I think I also have pictures from the first time this bloomed, so I might insert that instead. We'll see. Here is another peduncle it's working on. Like the peduncles, they don't just have, some of them do, but a few of these peduncles, they will keep going. Like they'll produce flowers multiple times for you. So once these fall off, it could very well have another round. This is its second round of flowers from this same peduncle, which I didn't know. I didn't know the same peduncle could keep putting them out. But as you can see, there's a peduncle right next to this one and it's not active. It's kind of just a stub, and there's no, there's no bumps on it really. So I'm not sure if it just decided to give up or, you know, if it was just done. It's like, hey, I'm done with the flowers, bro. And that's totally chill. I don't care. You do you, right? We have this peduncle and we have this peduncle over here that looks like it's working on its second round of flowers. So this thing is always growing, it's always blooming or flowering, it's putting out a bunch of new growth, and the new growth is gorgeous. It's like this bright red, like crimson color, and then it kind of turns into this like really bright pink color, and then it goes back to being more of a pinky green, and then it just becomes green and has the variegation that it wants and has. Even the big leaves like this one still have some pink on them. Again, this one is in pretty direct light, but it's kind of filtered because we have curtains that are really see-through, white curtains, but they still filter some of that light from hitting the leaves, but they still will get sun stressed. And so leaves being this pink is a sign of that sun stressing, but also if you can tell, it kind of looks almost muddy on some of these leaves and spotty and speckly, and like those brown spots, purple spots are concerning because they look an awful lot like thrip damage. But they are not, in fact. This plant does not have thrips, knock on wood. It does not have thrips right now. Not saying it never will, I hope it won't, but currently extremely healthy and happy in the south-facing window with pretty direct, somewhat filtered light. I cannot believe I forgot the Matilde. This beauty sits in this little pot with this little cute ceramic mushroom on a trellis that we made. Right now it is doing okay. It hasn't put out a whole lot of new growth. Okay, finally, before my camera decides to stop working, we will go over the ranking. Okay, so now to rank these Hoya based off of what's the easiest, in my opinion, here we go. This one's the hardest, okay? The Obovata, very slow grower. Some people can grow it perfectly fine. In my house, my conditions, my care, it's very slow. So this is the hardest, in my opinion, the hardest Hoya. Very difficult. What's next? Then it's the Ibok back there. Not super hard, not super easy though, because I would say it's pretty sensitive to underwatering. Carnosa comes next. It also is not super hardy when it comes to underwatering, but still kind of is. So it's kind of on the same level, I would say, on the Ibok in terms of ease of care. Then we have these two, which are the Freckle and the Wilbur. They kind of just grow. Sometimes they stop growing if I forget to moisten their pebbles in there. So fairly easy, but you know, still gotta keep up on watering. Then comes these two, because these two are newer and they just seem to be growing a lot more right now than these two. I would say these just kind of continually are poking out new growth, so that's great. Fairly hardy when it comes to underwatering, I would say, like slightly more than these ones. Joey and Freckle, come here. Sorry about my doggies. I would put this probably right before the Pubicalyx in terms of ease. The pride and joys, I would say, the Pubicalyx up there and this Lisa right here. The easiest, I would say, is this Lisa. We've quite honestly not done very much. We've repotted it and that's about it. We water it, sometimes we underwater it. It's lost a couple of leaves because of that. It's in pretty direct light, pretty bright light. We don't really move it. We don't really do much to it. Just keeps going and it blooms. It's doing the best out of all of our Hoya. It grows the most. It's been very joyous to grow, as they all have been, but I think in particular, this is the easiest Hoya in our collection. Okay. And folks, that is all I have for this video. If you liked it, give it that thumbs up, subscribe. That's the best way to support me and continuing to show you my plants, what I do for them, what they do for me, and sharing that all with you. I really love sharing my plants with everyone. I'd also really love to see everyone else's plants. So if you get a chance, show me some pictures on Instagram, comment down below any suggestions you might have for me and this Obovata here. What do I do? How do I make it grow more? Please let me know. But that is it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. It's raining, so if you can hear the rain, that's why. And the wind.